Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Talking about environment and Greta Thunberg, here's David Eby and Alberta's chance to get a pipeline to coastal waters. Listen to what Mr. Eby has to say. I mean, just says it over and over again.
I'll point out what is obvious to me and has yet to fully sink in for some individuals, which is that there is no pipeline project across the north. There is no route. There is no proponent. There is no financing. Simply because the Premier of Alberta would like to get rid of the oil tanker ban on the north coast does not mean that anybody wants to build this pipeline. It would cost $40 to $50 billion. It would require navigating a consensus at the provincial and coastal First Nations level that has a different approach to growing our economy by developing our coast. And so I'll be blunt. I don't see any prospect of a pipeline unless it is fully taxpayer funded and the federal government forces it through over provincial and Indigenous objections. So it's really difficult for me to shadow box with a non-existent project that has non-existent benefits because it will never be built and it's not going to happen. That's where we're operating. We're not operating in wedge politics world. We're operating in the real world here.
You want to talk about wedge politics, Mr. Eby? Eleanor Sturko put out this morning here. The NDP failing in its duty to notify British Columbians of active litigation impacting their property. And David Eby's response to that was, well, the court promised that they wouldn't deal with private lands. Turns out they did. And then here it is right now. First Nations claims entirety of Kamloops and surrounding area. And I'm going to get this wrong. Secretive Nation is claiming Aboriginal title over the entire...
Look, I would say, sorry, just to interrupt you there for a second. Those names are not written to be understood or pronounced, are they? Let's just be clear about that. They're written to trip people up. So I think there's no shame in not knowing how to pronounce that. It's just, that's the intent, I think.
They're claiming the title over the entirety of the city of Kamloops and surrounding areas, according to a document unearthed by an independent MLA, Eleanor Sturko. The Surrey Cloverdale said there could be hundreds of similar claims that are filed, and we don't know because the government has so far refused to notify property owners. She's calling on the BC NDP to come clean. John Rustad has also asked for that. I've done 3 interviews now with Jeff Moyse, 31 years in the government, for Aboriginal law through 6 governments. And he's going to come on, I think, next week. He's just reading through some of the other settlements here. And this thing could get, I mean, there's talk that banks aren't refinancing some of these properties right now. So David Eby's opened up a can of worms that calls into legitimacy of British Columbia and the Crown. Because the Crown can't...
It isn't just David Eby. I mean, this didn't just happen all of a sudden. It's his predecessors as well. And also people federally who are responsible for this,
Jeff Moyse
including
said
Justin
a lot of this
Trudeau.
has to do with DRIPA. And so that's what he said. The BC did not have to adopt DRIPA. And it did.
UNDRIP. Yeah.
Yeah. And then DRIPA, UNDRIP. There's 2 parts of it, I guess. And then,
sounds like rap lyrics.
and he said it's not part of our constitutional law. So they've made a mess with it. And the bigger part is that they've done all these negotiations behind closed doors. The Haida for the Haida decision, that was done behind closed doors and was just announced. And what they're calling for is for this to happen out into the public forum so people can at least have the right to defend their property. And that wasn't offered to those people in Richmond. So that it could take 7 years for that thing, for a final decision by the Supreme Court of Canada to be handed down. In the meantime, I guess the lawsuits will start piling up for the government of British Columbia, because the only recourse, when I talked to Jeff Moyse, the lawyer there, is sue the BC government. Because what else are you going to do? And where are they going to get the money to cover? I think it's about $2.7 trillion of the property here in Canada, private property.
But Eby said that as well. He said, oh, this is our responsibility. First Nations have said, yeah, it's BC government. It's like everyone's saying that. But yeah, you're right. Where's the money going to come from? But look, you're also right to what you were talking about, Jeff Moyse. I think you were talking about the sort of legal regime that currently is in place. That is being spoken of by David Eby, First Nations, Eleanor Sturko, even to an extent John Rustad, less so, but to an extent John Rustad. That is being spoken of as though it's the moon or something like that. It's as like, you can't touch it. It's the moon, mate. But it's actually, no, it's not. It's very recent legislation in many cases. And we have, as we talk about a lot, we have here the Westminster system, which means Parliament is sovereign. Parliament can basically do anything that it wants, up to and including getting rid of the Constitution. It can do a change in the Constitution. It can do anything. But where is the politician coming out and saying, we need to change the law here? Because this is Canada. This is one country. This is not hundreds of countries. We can't tolerate this split sovereignty. We can't have it anymore because we made mistakes. In the 20th century, in the early 21st century, we got ahead of ourselves. We got a little bit excited and we made a lot of mistakes legislative mistakes. Now we're going to change them. So now you're going to don't worry, we're going to restore property rights. Canada will be a country. Don't worry about it. It's not like sovereignty won't be in question anymore. But nobody's saying that. No. Yeah, and more surprisingly, I think, is Eleanor Sturko. She's sniping at this. She knows how crazy this is, but she isn't coming out and saying, we need to change the law. We need a recognition of reality rather than some fantasy based on what was going on in British Columbia in the 1820s or something like that. You can't live on historical illiteracy. You can't have a functional political system based on a misunderstanding of history. So obviously that's what needs to happen. But that would take colossal brass balls to do. And you look around the political landscape in BC and Canada, and do you see a single person in possession of those balls? Because I don't.
I think right now Canada's heading into an economic winter. We don't even have one nation. We have a bunch of fractured provinces, and all we see is a bunch of infighting. And then within those provinces, we also see a bunch of groups that are saying they have their own nations. So there's nations within the nations within the nations. And you know what I mean? It's just, there is no certainty, and that's why capital flees Canada. That's why capital flees Canada. And it seems like that budget that was put out yesterday, and you heard it here first, carbon capture, carbon capture, carbon capture. It's like they're going to fleece the last few pennies out of this place before they let this nation fall apart. It seems like it's falling apart in many ways, because where's Carney speaking and telling people that we need, like you say, you need to come up and you need to say Canada comes first. Canada comes first. Comes before David Eby. David Eby, take a seat. Canada comes first. All these things need to be Canada first. Mark Carney's not talking about that. If you read that budget, the pillar in that budget is carbon capture and the lifting of the emissions cap for the profit of, what, a few companies that are going to start charging carbon credits?
But also, just to go back to you mentioned wedge politics. David Eby mentioned wedge politics, didn't he? A definition of wedge politics, for anybody that maybe has forgotten or doesn't know, it means to go in to another, your opposition's support base, put a wedge in between them on an issue to get them to be divided so that your opposition is divided. I find it so funny that he references wedge politics like, we're not playing wedge politics, we're in reality, in his usual sort of catty camp fashion. And yet earlier on in that speech, he said, he literally, it was like a dictionary example of wedge politics, where he said, we don't want a pipeline on the BC North Coast. And actually, that's what conservatives have always wanted. And many conservatives today also feel the same way. It's like giant wedge between the conservatives. It's just like the audacity of this individual, Mr. Dave Eby. It's just, obviously, this is pretty run of the mill, isn't it, for politicians nowadays? But I just find it with Eby, he often contradicts himself like one sentence later. There's just no shame. It's almost as if like nobody's listening to him. He's
running out of ideas, that's for sure. It looks like they might be the end of the road for these ostriches that have got international attention. But the appeal has been dismissed, meaning the Supreme Court will not hear the Universal Ostrich Farms case. That means there's no legal obstacle standing in the way from culling of these birds. The Supreme Court did not provide an explanation for the decision, writing simply, the motion for the stay of execution is dismissed. So obviously a lot of reaction on the internet. There's a lot of people that are really strongly attached to these ostriches, and that's so now I guess the CFIA is now free to dispose of these 300 ostriches.
Last I checked, yeah, that is and they've said they're going to. They instantly, like they'd already written it. They'd already written the statement clearly, and they just pressed send. Yeah. As soon as the Supreme Court released that decision, they said, "Yeah, we're going to go kill them. We're going to do it." But when I'm looking at all the videos, because obviously this is like a social media bonanza, isn't it? This the ostrich thing, and it doesn't look like it's happened yet. But I don't know. This is a controversial view, but I mean, I kind of feel a little bit of pity for the people who are going to have to do it, because I'm sure there's a reasonably high chance that they don't want to do it, and they're doing it just for to keep their jobs or something like that. And they're going to be like scrutinized in an extreme way. And people are like, you'd have to call them threats of violence are going all over the place against the Food Inspection Agency. So I hope that it doesn't become violent. But there's kind of the prospect of that.
We've asked for several interviews. Talked to one guy here locally, and we were actually going to live stream their event here in Kelowna. And it was scheduled. They were doing it at one of the local pubs, and then it got kiboshed because a lot of local people stood up and didn't want it here. This thing is turned into this political football. Like, it's almost like the right versus the left, and I don't understand it. To me, it seems to have taken on a life of its own on like political extreme on both sides.
I think it's class as well. Class is something that's not spoken about very often in Canadian society, but I think there's a real class element to this. And if you listen to the woman, Katie, whatever her name is, people know who I mean, I'm sure. She's like the main spokeswoman. If you listen to her speak in the language that she uses, it reminds me rather a lot of Tamara Lich, or Lich, however you pronounce it. It reminds me a little bit of the convoy. The language that she uses, she's using she has the perspective of, I don't know what you want to say, like working class, ordinary sort of Canadians. And it's the same language, and I feel like a lot of people in places like Vancouver and Ottawa and all the rest of it, they hear that and they're just like, oh, these peasants. So it's like, I really think there's a big class dimension to this. And that's kind of one of those things that plays out in the periphery of these kind of situations. Because undoubtedly, the trucker convoy was kind of like a Marxist would have a whale of a time studying that. It was almost entirely class-based, I think.
So here, the journalists are starting to, come, especially the journalists that are, live off the government, says, "Oh, we've always gone to parties." Of course they would defend it, eh?
Who said that?
One of the journalists here saying that every budget I've covered, the government of both parties have been followed by after-party bashes.
The parties do happen. That's right. That's what I was saying earlier. And these meetups happen, but there are so many questions that naturally follow on from that, like who was invited, and why are you so stupid that you're being photographed laughing and smiling with
media?
The finance minister, who is inevitably, just because of the job he's in, an extremely polarizing, controversial figure. It's not for you to do that, especially when it's your job to hold this person and these people in the room to account, and you're there like slurping bubbly and having a laugh with them.
But Ian, let's be serious now. The government now pays almost 50% of the salaries of many journalists in Canada. So who do they work with? And that's not an exaggeration. That's basically the truth. It's almost half of the salaries are paid by the journalists are paid by the government through several schemes after they crippled media with Bill C-18. So there's that.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.